a manufacturer located in Columbia, Tennessee, and sources only local organic ingredients and carefully selected fresh farms from around the Southeast and Tennessee. All their edibles are made in their bakery in Tennessee and Columbia. Vernon Acres committed to Vernon Acres committed to providing a luxury experience backed by transparency. Their owner, John Currington, is an award-winning pioneer and expert in the cannabis space and 100% committed to ensuring Vernon Acre products to be quality standards in the industry. So please check out Vernon Acre, and if you're listening to this show later on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you stream music, just make sure you click the link and learn more about Vernon Acre. All right, folks, from tonight, it's the last recording of the year. It's Cash Color Christmas episode. Man, we have a special episode tonight. So if you are listening from Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you're really missing out on a party. And I ain't gonna
Big
lie
party.
tonight, bro. I got a friend of mine in the studio, and normally I've got a whole list of questions written out. And I said to myself when I walked in, I said, I ain't gonna do that tonight. What we're gonna do is have a full ass conversation. We're gonna freestyle.
Okay,
And we
I'm
gonna
with
act like I
that.
actually know you.
I'm with
We gonna
that.
act like I actually know you.
Unscripted.
Unscripted. Man,
Unscripted.
So without further ado, man, I would love to introduce my guest tonight. Father, he's a hoop head, a connoisseur of fine bud, and
Always.
a budding businessman. I'm pun intended in the cannabis space, and that's my good friend Alex Stone out of New Jersey. Alex, what's up with you, man?
What's good, baby? You doing all right?
Man, I'm doing good, man. It's like now the second time you've been in the studio. First time we had you actually as a guest.
Yeah, man. It was a pleasure, like, being able to come here. And also, like, you know, kudos to you and your team and you guys' growth. You know, being able to meet you at kind of like the incubation of, I felt like, you know, what you were doing, and you had really had a vision.
Yeah.
You know, you were mission oriented, which I really liked, you know what I'm saying? And you were a family guy. This was before you were married, too.
Yeah, facts.
You know what I mean? So it was cool to see you kind of go from step to step and grow in different stages, man. And, you know, I'm glad to be here.
Bro, thank you very much, because sometimes I feel like I don't know what the hell I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? We just show
We
up.
all on that
Sometimes
vibe,
people
man.
show up, or sometimes we show up and we have good episodes. But it's always good to when you know people who you actually know represent, you know what I'm saying, can recognize what's going on. So, and that's another reason why I wanted to have you on. When I thought about doing my last episode this year, I wanted to kind of give people a vibe of what I'm trying to bring into from here on out, which is, you know, every episode should be an experience like this one. Like shout to Life Griffith over there. Everybody should know my man Life. Life put together a musical soundtrack and made me feel like I was Arsenio Hall tonight. Like, so thank you very much, my man. But I want to make sure everything is an experience, and part of that experience is bringing out people who aren't familiar to the Atlanta space. You know, somebody who's more on the national scene. So you fit the description perfect. Like, if y'all don't know, man, Al's been everywhere from, you know, like somebody, like they was just mentioning. I just saw you on Black Enterprise not too long ago.
Yeah, man.
Like, you're popping.
I mean, I've been out here a long. It's funny, like, being out here as long as I have, you know, doing this thing, and there's so many people who are from the activist side to the operator side to brokers. I mean, there's so many different sides to this game, right? But you're in it so long, and then like people just kind of start to finally get to know who you are or recognize you. But it's funny because like when you know other people in the industry, we've all been in it so long, like it makes no difference, you know, like it's the same kind of fraternity because it's a small fraternity, right? Yeah. And that's why it makes these type of things so special.
Facts, man. Facts, bro. So, but for those who don't know who you are, you know, introduce yourself, please, and tell them everything that you do, from Stone and the Family to even with the hoops.
So my name is Alex Stone. I'm from Central Jersey, and before Cannabis, I played college basketball. I coached college basketball. I had a daughter. And at the time, you know, I was really chasing that, like, trying to be the first black head coach at Notre Dame. I worked at Notre Dame kind of getting into college basketball. So that's why it was always my goal. And then I had a daughter, and all the head coaches and guys that were aspiring head coaches that I had known, I won't say we're bad fathers, but weren't very involved fathers, you know?
Well, so, being a basketball coach is a heavily involved, you know,
especially we talking about recruiting, you know what I mean? Like if you got any type of hand or arm in recruiting, you know, you're more in the business of raising other people's kids and finding better weapons to go into that tool in the next 4 years than you are at home with yours, you know? So when I realized that, I resigned and I got into AAU, which always brought me out here, because coaching with Under Armour, we would always come out here for the finals, right? So, but then that kind of made me an entrepreneur. You know, you start to get away from the 9-to-5 world. And I always kind of messed around with the plant. And I've always been a connoisseur, so to speak. So that's kind of what propelled me into Stone in the Family. And I started to say, all right, well, I have a daughter and I'm working in weed. If I'm going to be going to PTA meetings and telling motherfuckers that this is my full-time job, I got to have a plan. I can't just be out here moving weight. You know what I mean? You can't
be just a weed parent.
Or you got to have a different excuse and just have a whole different approach where that like anybody else who's been in the streets, that game has an end game, right? Like, so you don't want to get caught up in that. So it was like, all right, let me start to have a plan. And I realized this was like right when Prop 215 was kind of booming and people were understanding branding. And, I had a sneaker store at the time, so I kind of understood branding very well. So I got into the merch, and then I started to kind of gain more of an understanding of like, well, your average, let's say like your average eighth that you buy from your weed guy, right? It might go up and down depending on what you like and what you're looking for, but that price might not go up and down. So why is that, And when you really get to the heart of it, it boils down to cultivation and how close to a cultivator are you. And then now that you get away from like land raised strains to now all of this like hybridization of different phenols and flavors and so on and so forth, these different flavors or different strains are brands, So I kind of developed the mentality of I want to create, a family-centric brand that's a conglomerate of brands, because like what I got tired of was, coming up in the game, hustling and kind of have to get finesse to learn.
Yeah.
It's almost like, you talked about real estate earlier, like you learn how to flip houses. You can go to school for that shit, but the real lessons are when you lose some money or a contractor finesse you,
like you was telling
or
me.
you pay more for materials than you need to,
Yeah.
or so like it's like kind of going to school. So I kind of looked at the trap game the same way, like you I guess like pay these sacrifices or you paying your tolls, but like what gets annoying is like the education side isn't there. There's no formal education for it, right? So like where are you learning these things from, or who are you learning them from? Yeah. So I wanted to create something to where like every aspect of the supply chain that I wanted to touch, I wanted there to be an expert that comes and is a family member, right? So like I'm this overarching, brand, but I'm a conglomerate of brands. And that's when I found Victory Farms, and then I started to gain more understanding of, how the plant is really cultivated and genetics. And then like it's not just growing weed, but it's breeding if you want to be able to create and author brands, right? And
that takes time.
Yeah,
that
it's
takes
real
a lot of
time. Some of these artists will come and they'll say, "Oh, I want a strain. Let me just get a strain. You got one?" And it's like, man, think about it, like if you were creating a brand, right? Like you wanted to feel and sound like you. Or at least like something that you're creating. So if you're going to have some weed that you want to put in a bag and be your brand, like it's got to make sense for you. Like, so you might like gas or cookies a little more than the next man, and the next man may like gelato or, something else more than you do. So you got to figure out, it's like having a kid. You got to figure out what the two parents are going to be, have a prize child. And then like what people don't understand is it's truly like having kids. You got to have a bunch of them, figure out genetically in terms of what you're looking for, what the best one is, then kind of figure out how to re-engineer like that one in terms of the cuts and pheno hunting and so on and so forth.
Bro, Art, it's crazy how you speaking of like this. I see rappers with strains all the time, and I just know you get handed a bag.
Yeah, because there's a white label,
way
bro.
You're doing any of this.
Because there's not. Well, there's. I will say like there are certain companies that do the groundwork, and once you see a partnership on paper or you see something marketized, it might be a year of groundwork that went into previously creating that partnership. So they may have done that groundwork.
Yeah.
I do know. brands and strains out there that have, and it's more of a long-term process. It's the longer deals that you see, but we're in an era where everybody wants to get into weed first and foremost.
First conversation you have in these streets nowadays.
So then you multiply that by like a lot of these stars may or may not have the notoriety in their sector the way they want, so they want to get into other markets. That's just the way anybody else is. You got to diversify, right? Yeah. So people are trying to get in, and they're taking the white label route because it's a kind of a backdoor way into the market, right? Like if you can't afford a cultivation license, you can just get it on a store shelf through white label.
No, and salute people who do that. Like it's no way a negative. Like you got to find the smartest way to do business at all times. What bothers me is when you see people who literally give off the vibe that this is my shit.
Well, that's the kind of the thing, and I'm glad like we'll get a chance to touch on that subject because like it's about brand authenticity and like. Real niggas just want you to be honest. You know what I mean? Just tell me what it is. Even if it's some white label work, like if it's gas, at least let me ask about what it is and where it comes from, and let's like figure this out together type shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But I love talking. Yo, when rappers don't know what they smoking or don't know, or even best, because I've been in a room before where I listened to a rapper just explain his try to explain his edible line. And I thought to myself how much nobody asked him any real detail. You know what I'm saying? Because the most he could tell you was it was good. Like they didn't ask him like what strain you used. You know what I'm saying? Like nothing sort of that. And I'm thinking to myself, bro probably don't even eat his own shit.
Yeah, I mean, and like what's funny in the edible world, like it's a whole different ball game. Like I don't know anybody that successfully just like eats edibles all the time because it's such a different body high. It takes over. Like for me, like I smoke blunts all day. I'm around big bags of weed. If my occupation, I'm blessed. But edibles, like I don't really like. I'm not really trying to fuck with more than 50 milligrams, and to be honest, like you could have that, like
because it'll sit you down.
Exactly, and I'm moving around. You know what I mean? Like I've been in four different states in the last 24 hours. Like I can't do that off no edible. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I'd be asleep on a plane in a whole other city. You know what I'm saying?
Yo, facts too. You have moved around a lot. Because when I first asked you about coming down to the city, I knew you knowing you know what I'm saying, you would be en route in some way, shape, or another. And you do bounce from here. You in New York one day. Like first off, talk about your regular day. Like why are you moving around so much when it comes to doing this business? Like are you constantly just trying to touch new people or trying to make sure that you bring in new energy or something?
Because weed is still federally illegal.
Fact.
And from different states, like when you go state to state, every depiction of legal looks differently. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we were just talking about that with Jersey.
It's all about creativity. Yeah. And I learned early that if you're playing the long game and this is really where you want to be, it's about like how many places your brand can be and how you do that, right? And like the easiest way for me to spread it was through brand awareness, activism, normalizing the plant, and then becoming a consultant, and then spreading it through consultancy. So that's why I go so many different places, because there's so many different jobs on the ticker. Yeah. And currently, myself with Stone and the family, along with Victory Farms, we're going after a cultivation license in New Jersey. So you ask about New Jersey. New Jersey recently flipped over into recreational from medical, right? But what's kind of crazy is they had us vote on this law to make it recreational, but there was no recreational sale. But like you got to think, like if you're a pedestrian and you get a chance to vote on weed, you're like, shit, like weed's coming. You know what I mean? Like I'm fucking with this.
Oh, they never think about the details.
But nobody asked.
Nobody,
you know what I'm saying? About the details. So like then weed becomes legal, but there's no more dispensaries. It's still medical. Mm-hmm. And there aren't any recreational licenses being handed out. So it's a long process and a waiting game. They're actually opening up cultivation licenses and retail licenses tomorrow. And it's kind of like a rolling application sort of thing. But it's an exciting time. You know what I mean? It's a definitely exciting time. And people are getting established in the market in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah. You know what I like too? The state right next to y'all, New York. New York has the potential to be a major market.
Yeah, I mean, they're all what we call the TriState Area, right? Like when you add in Philly and a couple of these other states, around. So they're all, I feel like, huge areas for interstate commerce. And what's interesting is like how they're gonna allow entrepreneurs to get set up versus how they're going to allow multi-state operators to come in and take advantage of that aspect that we're talking about.
And what's the difference?
The difference of what? Like, what do you mean?
When you just mentioned the way they're going to set up for people to come in as far as like individual versus multi-state, people have multi-state licenses.
So like all the multi-state operators for the most part are already established because they were allowed to get in on the medical side. Because like on the medical side, the barriers of entry were so high. It's funny because me and one of my homies were trying to apply. This is like 4 years ago. And you still needed, I think, a capital guarantee of like, you had to been making $275,000 for the last like 3 years. This is 4 years ago. You had to have already been able to buy a building and secure site control, have a board of medical directors and a bank of like $4.5 million. It was a whole like.
Bro, you had to have a business plan that was 5 years. Yeah,
it was crazy. You know what I'm saying?
5 years ahead of the 3 years they need you to make the money.
But like the interesting thing that like a lot of these companies and people don't realize when you get into weed, especially when you get into weed like on the cultivation side. Is like if you ain't been growing weed, there's so many errors and different things that'll happen, especially when you talk about growing weed to scale. Like the country before really like largely legalizing weed, was leaning on these renegade growers, if you will, like in California, Washington, areas where you can have, large plots of land, right? And the weather's nice, temperate. And we're growing weed, especially on an indoor scale, on a smaller side, right? And then kind of like it'd be multiple houses, right? So now when you're talking about trying to move that into a warehouse, like the weed quality kind of goes down. It's kind of like what we were talking about before with like brand authenticity. It's not just like, let me get the formula for Coca-Cola and let me figure out how many places I can produce Coca-Cola. Like it's not that simple. So people don't realize there's a margin of error. And like anything, you're starting a business and you have an overhead. If you can't create the product that's going to funnel that money back into paying for your overhead, like overhead just doubles and triples and quadruples. And like that's why people were going broke, because like you create that as the barrier of entry. These multi-state operators, because you got to think like what's standard in most businesses is losing money for like what 3-4 years before you become profitable.
Yeah, that's they're taught that early. You're gonna go broke. Well, you're gonna lose money before you make money.
But that's the gambit. Is like most entrepreneurs can't afford to lose money for 3 or 4 years before it becomes profitable.
And certainly not black entrepreneurs. Like you talking about a place, you talking about a group of people who barely can get those type of loans. Definitely can't get no loan for weed, but you barely can get loan to get your basic small business up and moving. So you really don't have the ability to lose that bread.
Yeah. Excuse me. Let me be detailed. I'm a black entrepreneur, so I don't even know what it's like to be an other. So when I say entrepreneurs, I'm just talking about us. You know what I mean?
Yeah. This is a conversation.
You already.
we talking about us for the primarily. But fact, yeah, like when you think about it, like trying to get that money is hard as hell. So to know that you're walking in it, knowing that you're going to lose money is almost like. It's why people sell those licenses, and it's why people would rather give up.
Well, there's that business plan too. There's people that get in the game just to be able to sell it, and that's their retirement plan.
Oh, bro, we working for a real estate company now. Yeah, like I'm literally working for a company that's with the goal of this is to build this up so we can sell it and move to the next one. Like, don't even get comfortable.
Yeah, so that's an interesting approach.
Yeah,
but then like there's no brand authenticity in that. There's no mission in that. There's just let me just get this money and get out.
Facts, because the minute you leave, it's not going to be the same company. You know what I mean? Like you turn it over to new people, so the people you just met, they ain't going to be here in 2 months.
Yeah, I mean that's every business you see, right? Like my dad, he works in like animal pharmaceuticals. And since I've been a kid, his business has probably been bought and sold like over 20 times. So it looks completely different than how it looks, or 3 years ago versus 5 years ago versus 8 years ago.
Yeah.
But like that kind of folds back into our point or earlier was like, when you're creating a brand in cannabis, like what type of brand authenticity are you going to have, or do you have? Because I think people are starting to understand that in the retail space, if you're creating a product and you want that product sold and you want it to keep getting sold and people to line up, if people get used to your product in California, and then I'm a traveler. So let's say I'm in Maryland and your product's for sale in Maryland. Like, as long as there's a line of it's the same, people are going to keep coming back. But if you don't, then I'm going to go looking for a new product, like but I think like people that understand that level of retail space, they don't understand weed, because kind of it don't always translate the same.
I think often about how, because cannabis is going to continue to grow as far as being a business, and you see all the strains, you see all the different brands that's that's out right now. I always wonder how quick we're going to see some of those brands fall off. You know what I mean? Because it's almost impossible to maintain this level of people in the market when there's only going to be people who continue to go to the same thing. It's why cookies is popular. Like, you know the name. You talk about brand, saying brand, having that type of brand equity. Do you ever think about that when you think about growing Stone? Like, what can I do to make sure that not only, one, that we stay relevant to the people who do smoke with us and who fuck with us, but also stay to the point where we're growing and we maintain a foothold in the market and not just fall to the wayside like a lot of other brands are eventually going to do?
For sure. I mean, like, a lot of it is, what's your mission, and are you mission driven, and like, do you really believe in that shit, or are you just preaching it or putting it on your website because it looks good? And for us, we're equity owned and equity run, right? And our goal is to be able to touch as many different pieces of the supply chain as we can to not only hire our people but empower our people. So that's kind of the whole like Stone in the family mantra, if you will, right? So like, I'm a cultivator, right? But we're also creating these brands that are going to be sold all throughout the supply chain down to a retail. So that touches manufacturing when we create live resin and rosin and different extracts. These are all going to be sold within these brands that we create. So largely, like, if my business does well and I can scale up and get more licensing, but I have partners or people that I've worked with that don't have licenses, I can easily plug people into situations, keep money and business in-house, and really create, money and equity for, individuals that look like you and I. So that's, well within our business plan. And we're not the only business that has that. So trying to collaborate with other businesses that have that like-minded approach, and then you can grow into multi-state operations and multi-state kind of stature without having to own a license in every state. Because that's the toughest thing, is like, nobody can really afford to say, hey, I want to be in these 3 states, so I'm going to go get licenses in all 3 of these states. It's very hard and can be very expensive. So an easier route, I felt like, was to just achieve that through collaboration. So that's kind of what was built into our business plan and how we operate. So that'll always be, I think, a staple of, who and what we are and how we serve. So I think that's we're always gonna stay engaged, because that's the mission of what we set out to do. That's what we're currently doing. So that's what we're gonna keep doing.
So tonight's gonna be probably the first time I get a chance to actually smoke Stone in the family bud. And it's crazy because we were supposed to in Vegas, and Vegas was a whole different level of insanity for me. Mm-hmm. We was down there for MJ Biz, and I tell you, I'm notoriously cheap. I ain't gonna lie to y'all. Like, I know what I like paying for. I'll pay for it, but it's like, we gonna, I'm gonna be upset later.
And Vegas can get expensive.
I get to Vegas. I went to 3 places, and this is how I know I nitpicked out rest of the day. I spent almost $300 going to 3 places.
And at one point, I know
your mindset,
bro, it fucked my whole day, man. It fucked my whole night up.
It's like, y'all ain't even responding to no more texts. Fuck
No,
this,
and that's where I was like, yo, I hope Al don't think I'm not fucking with him, because literally you was texting me, and my whole mind state was,
I've learned, bro.
Do I want to spend $60 to go down the street? Like, I don't know, man. Like that was a lot of bread. I kind of want to walk it out, but there's a whole lot of other shit going on in Vegas. Like, I don't know if y'all know, have just been to Vegas. Vegas itself is.
It's a monster.
It's a monster, bro. Like we got followed in the casino. Like, I know this dude was on us. Like literally was on us. Like the way I was walking, I was like, shit, this nigga fuck with us.
Yeah.
So I'm not walking down the street. But I also not spending $60. So understand, I was trying to get that.
That's what it's gonna cost. You know
yeah, exactly. I was trying to fuck with you, but that night was
it's no.
ridiculous.
I got you. It isn't personal. I know how it goes. I've learned, because we've been going to MJ BizCon like for 4 or 5 years now.
Facts.
So like I've learned that craziness will drive you crazy if you kind of lead into it. And I'm fortunate enough to where, I'm not in your industry, so I don't have to meet with a bunch of people. And what I've learned is like, people like the gas. So usually I'll go get me a little fly location and I'll just be there, and niggas will pull up or niggas won't. But you know what I'm saying?
Bro, I wish I can get on your level. Like literally the next day, and you ain't lying about meeting these people. I go from what was it, the Palms Casino penthouse joint with clientele, because they was doing their documentary, to I had to go back to the convention center. Me and E, we was camped out there for 4 hours, and literally I could not stop talking to people for 4 hours, and I wanted to take a break so bad and go smoke a blunt.
Yeah, man. It's it's exhausting. You know what I'm saying?
Facts, man. I wish I would have saw you in New Orleans. Like Black CannaCon was a vibe.
Yeah, I was down there. I'm trying to remember what I was down there for, but I was down there like a week before that, so it was tough to just come back. I remember that, because we was trying to coordinate. Then you was like, "Yo, I'm in New Orleans." I was like, "Shit, I'll be there in a couple of days. I'm leaving." Yeah. My grandmother lives in Baton Rouge, so I'll be going down there, visit her, and then I'll usually spend 2 days eating. And then I'll come back home. Yeah. Because in restaurants in New Orleans, man.
You can't.
Like I was just telling my partner with Victory Farms, like I find it hard in New Orleans to like go out to like social events now, because I'm a glutton for food. Like I'll go to New Orleans and I'm probably going to 4 restaurants a day. You know what I mean? So like by 1 a.m. after like downing some bread pudding somewhere or like some beignets, you know what I mean, and 4 drinks, it's like, yo, I ain't going to the lounge, I ain't going to the club, you know what I mean, I just smoke another L, go back to the hotel. So
so you're their customer.
Yep.
Yeah, you're their demographic. Get somebody who's gonna smoke and come eat all this food.
Yep. That's fun, man. I can't wait till like we start to see consumption lounges come about. So then you see like hotels that like are catered to like, because you got to think like all the fly hotels shy you away from smoking.
Don't make me smile.
You know what I'm saying? Like imagine like a Soho House vibe. You been to Soho House?
No. I'm hearing some ooze though. Some New Yorkers in the building.
Treat yourself.
Yeah.
So like Soho House vibes, but like it's ashtrays. You're encouraged to smoke. Like that's coming. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So
let me put that on the to-do list. Soho House. I need to pull up.
Yeah, man. Yeah. In most major cities too, like New York, LA.
But you would have rocked with Black CannaCon. Black CannaCon was like this. No lie. Like people were so close to you. That's how you was talking about that Malik Yoba situation. Malik was talking on stage, and I just happened to show up early that day. Like I wasn't even supposed to be up. Like that's another thing about working in corporate America now. Like my whole body structure now gets up at 6:45 anyway. You know what I'm saying? So
It's not bad anyway.
Man, look, I'm just up in the
early bird gets the worm.
Early bird gets the worm, but at the same time though, I didn't need to be up until 11. You know what I'm saying? So still, I'm wide awake.
You just got a lot of worms to get, my nigga. You know
clearly, but no, on this day, clearly, because I roll up to the convention center to see if I can get a good spot to do the podcast. And that's when they asked me if I could introduce Wanda James or introduce Jesse Horton that day, because they didn't have nobody to do it. In the same time, though, I got a chance to watch Malik Yoba do his presentation, so I got a chance to just, kind of chop up with him and get him on the podcast. Some shit that probably couldn't have happened at MJ Biz because of how big MJ Biz is right now at this moment. Like, if y'all ever go to MJ Biz in Vegas, you talking about, what they say, 4 or 5 football fields of a convention center it is?
And then, like, it's so confusing because there's, like, it looks homogenous. It looks like a subdivision, right? Everything looks the same. It's cookie cutter. But, like, there's 2 ways in, Then like security, kind of like the way they divert you, like you're coming through two funnels, so like trying to find something on the map when you're looking. I mean, look, I'm not that guy with like looking at a paper and I just got to feel it out.
Like
so.
I feel like by next year this time, if not by next year, the year after next, Black CannaCon is going to get close to that level. But but the one they just did, the first live one they just did, it was almost perfect size for you to kind of really just get a good feeling networking and actually be able to meet up with some
And it was
people.
at the New Orleans Convention Center?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like with MJ Biz, if you really wanted to meet black entrepreneurs, you had to go to the Dice Mixer that night.
Yeah,
everybody was there.
It's
at
all
that
about
point.
the after parties.
Bro, it was like going to a black homecoming. Like no lie, like shout to Roz and them for that. It was like going to a black homecoming. Like we walked up in there and I was like, shit, somebody about to step. You know what I'm saying? Like the DJ playing, like it was nothing but black faces. It was lovely. That's how Black CannaCon was. And I'm and much love to Christy and them. I pray for nothing but success for that because that's what we honestly need. A good place, just kind of It was the first time in cannabis where I went to a conference and I could point out the white person. You know what I'm saying? Like normally it's just us and three.
I mean, I would have expected New Orleans to be like that though. You know, like New Orleans is so black.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I went to Xavier down there. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I was asking you, like, was it at that convention center? Because I know the city. But like, I would expect. I mean, even when like the Final Four comes to New Orleans, or like whether it's on the men's side or the women's side, and the coaching convention basically comes to New Orleans, you know, it's largely black. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just kind of how I be looking.
I thought that's another reason why it was the perfect place. Like somebody asked me, would you think it would work in Atlanta? And I'm like, well, it would, you know, because Atlanta we smoke. Like it just is what it is. Like people are gonna smoke outside. That's gonna happen. But with New Orleans, they're more like even their medical program. Well, what they have going on right now is damn near close to recreational. It's just not.
They have a vibrant cannabis community, bro.
And,
you know what I'm saying?
On top of that, they got the culture, the black culture. They got the food culture. Like it was just.
Bro, you talk about culture. All right, so circle back to like. And you ever seen the documentary? I think it's like Grass is Greener. It's the Bernard Noble Project. You know what I'm saying?
I have not.
All right, so like,
but shout out to them. Like I wanted to.
They kind of like were giving credence to like a lot of where cannabis comes from. Before it was hip hop, was jazz.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? And that's where jazz was born. And you know, largely like the crown of was New Orleans. You know what I'm saying? So. I learned like when I was going to school out there that it was such like a vibrant cannabis community and people that like weed wasn't like it wasn't like criminal, you know what I'm saying? Like I mean it was funny because like I moved down there right after Katrina, so the city was kind of like largely getting rebuilt, but like my going out party type vibe, like any of the places I went, like it was very acceptable to smoke weed in clubs out there. And this was like, I'm from Jersey, so this is around the time where like you still getting wrapped up and kicked out the club in New York for smoking weed, you know, in New York at the time. So it was real cool to like go to New Orleans and like, you know, New Orleans got a whole different kind of vibe, man. Like did you go out there?
I went to Treme Hideaway. Like I've been to New Orleans before. Like you got me reminiscent. The first time I went down there, I was in college and we went for Essence Fest.
Okay.
And not to date myself, but Cash Money was still taking over. Taking over. It wasn't necessarily 99 to 2000. It wasn't necessarily 99 to 2000, but it was pretty close. Like they
had no lock for a minute though.
Bro, Project Chick was banging so hard down there. Bro, you couldn't escape that record when I was down there at that time.
We in 2021. And go to one of them hole in the wall spots on Bourbon. Get your roll on still cranks.
I bet. I was about to say I've been to them holes in the wall, bro. Man. When I went down there my first time, no lie, I met this girl. She was a waitress, and I told her, I said, yo, I don't like doing no tourist shit. I was like, yo, take me to the city. She said, where you want to go? And my first thought was, I want to go see Magnolia Projects. So yeah, this happened. Like this real life a picture of me in some jeans and a white T-shirt wearing Durangos, standing in Magnolia Projects, posted up on a street sign that says Magnolia Street, nigga. And the crazy part is, I think how reckless I was when I was young, because there's clearly some niggas who are from Magnolia across the street. As I jump out this car, simply to take this picture with a disposable camera.
Hey, man.
and roll out.
It probably was the vibe. You know what I'm saying? It was just like, all right, we're not going to fuck with these niggas. You know what I'm saying?
Bro, it was right, man. Matter of fact, my first New Orleans trip was just ridiculous. I ended up telling this. I met a stripper named Chocolate. I ended up telling her I'd meet her for
Shout
breakfast.
out to Chocolate.
I literally told her I'd meet her for breakfast and forgot. Now, I don't know why
There
she
you go.
remembered. Because she sure called me first thing that morning and said, yo, we about to go out to eat. I'll never forget that story because I'm like, I forgot all about that. And
That's
I'm about to go right
hilarious.
back to bed.
That's hilarious.
Because
Fuck
New
it.
Orleans is alive.
Yeah, New Orleans. I mean, like, that's one of the only cities where like shit is still cranking till like 5, 6 in the morning. You know what I mean?
Bro,
So,
it's
like,
really the absolute only city you could hire yourself a band and have a parade. Like that is the only
That
city
is.
you could do that. $200. Like, well, shout out.
Probably
that's the only
cheaper.
city you could do that at is go hire
Probably
you a band
cheaper.
and go ahead and get you a parade going.
Second line.
Yeah, shout out to New Orleans, man. Yeah, it's definitely New Orleans is a great vibe, man. Al, I want to get back. I want to let people actually get to meet you. There's definitely a good crowd of people out here who want to get to know about Alex Stone and Stone and the family. So we're gonna fade this out, but before we get out of here, bro, I want to definitely thank you for coming through.
You already know.
You already know you family,
My
man.
pleasure,
Like I was
man.
glad
Thank
to
you.
have you.
Thank you for having me.
I'm glad to have you set the vibe for what we about to go do in 2022, man. Because you was the
Yeah,
perfect
man.
person to kick this off with.
Yeah, and that's why I brought you some 2023 weed. You know what I'm saying?
I feel like the time traveler from the year 2005. Like, what are
Yeah,
y'all
man.
doing with this? This how y'all doing weed now?
These are like the precursors to like some of the dope projects that we're gonna be having available in New Jersey and California in the rec market. So
Word.
it's pretty exciting. You know what I'm saying? But that's why I was so but I kept kind of trying to communicate with you to try to come because it was really important for me to get here. I wanted to be able to share some of these blessings because at the end of the day, this weed is medicine, and when it can be grown and appreciated as such, that's magical, right? And it's to be shared. It's not to be only capitalized on, right? And it's to be given and shepherded to indigenous communities and people that look like you and I. That this plant has, been a criminal act or a negative spot in our community for so long, and now that people are capitalizing off of it, we need to be at the forefront of a lot of these opportunities. So that's what kind of weed that is. You know what I'm saying?
My boy. Man, like I said, his name's Alex Stone. He's a connoisseur of fine bud. He's also a hoop head. He's also a father. He's also a black entrepreneur, and he's definitely part of the Atlantis crew. Thank you for coming through the Cash Color Cannabis tonight.
Thank you, my guy.
Us in this year, man.
All right, let's
And
get
that's
it.
Cash Color Cannabis, High Level of Conversation. This episode is sponsored by Burning Acre, but also shout out to all of our vendors and all of our sponsors tonight. Shout out to Black Mountains. Shout out to Bouquet. Shout out to Atlantis Clothing, obviously. Black Buddha. Shout out to Carpe Diem Medical, and big shout out to High Hemp Partners, man, because he about to set another tone when he about to go and get on these ones and twos. So
Let's
without
get it.
further ado, we out of here. It's Cash Color Cannabis, High Level Conversation. We about to have Cash Color Christmas. Bro.